Manny, I need your camera on, please.
It is on.
Oh, okay. Sorry. It looked like you were off. Okay, I am going off. Manny, I'll launch this in just a sec.
Okay. Real quick, Lavana, I'll just tell people to give them like 1 minute and then we'll get started.
That's perfect. Thanks.
Hey everyone, my name is Manny Espitia. I'm the Northern Regional Director here at Run for Something. We're gonna get started in just a minute, so just sit back and we'll get started in a bit. But thank you all so much for being here. We're gonna get started in a bit. All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. My name is Manny Espitia. My pronouns are he, his, him. I am the Northern Regional Director here at Run for Something. And welcome to our See Yourself Running, the realities of running as a Latinx candidate. This program is particularly near and dear to my heart because I myself am a Latinx elected official. I was elected to the New Hampshire State House in 2018 and was reelected in 2020. So I'm currently serving as my second term as a state representative. So a few housekeeping items before we get started. So please introduce yourself in the chat. Make sure your settings are set to all panelists and attendees and share your name, where you are and what brought you to this call this evening. Feel free to use the chat box to comment on the program or to interact with other attendees. This is a great chance to get to know people and help build community. And after some initial discussions with our panelists, we'll open up the floor for questions. So please put any questions you have for the panel in the Q&A box. We will pull questions from there and not from the chat box. So for this webinar, we are using Zoom live transcription services. If you would like to view captions on your screen, please click the More menu in the right-hand corner and select Show Subtitle. So if you need that, go ahead and do that. And later during the call, we will launch a poll. So if you'd like to take the next step in working with Run for Something, you'll be able to opt in. So stay tuned till the end to be able to participate in that poll. And with that, we have all the housekeeping covered. So let's get into the program. So we're so glad to have you and to discuss what it may be like to run for office as a Latinx candidate, whether you're running in 2021 or 2022 or thinking about running in the future. We hope this conversation tonight will help you think about how your lived experience impacts your work as a candidate and as a community member. To put it bluntly, we need more Latinx people running for office and getting elected across this country so that your experiences, our experiences, are reflected in the decisions we make in leading our communities. Tonight, our panel represents a range of identities and experiences and certainly doesn't represent the entire Latinx community experience, but this call is a place for us to come together as a political community invested in candidates from all walks of life to provide honest advice, answer questions, and create a community of support that you will need when you step up to run for office. And I want to take a moment to review what Run for Something is, what we're all about when we encourage young, diverse progressives to run for local and state office. And more specifically, Run for Something endorses diverse progressive candidates who are 40 and under, running for the first or second or third time, and running for down ballot offices, which includes city council, mayor, county commissioner, state legislature, school board, county clerk, sheriff, or district attorney, or anything on the local and state level. And so, since Run for Something started in 2017, we have identified more than 80,000 young people who want to run for office and have endorsed over 1,800 all-star candidates in all 50 states. And today, Run for Something has more than 500 candidates who've been elected in state and local office. And our winners are 55% women, 56% people of color, and 21% LGBTQIA+. We also provide coaching for our endorsed candidates to support you through every phase of your campaign. That's what I do. And you will work with people like myself to help you out through your race. And then we provide resources, trainings, and connect candidates with partners who can help, their campaigns. And we also work with our alumni to support current candidates and to make connections that will help them govern successfully once elected. So we do this because we know that more young, diverse, and exciting progressives running strong grassroots campaigns across the country will increase the immediate turnout for Democrats up and down the ticket and help build political power for underrepresented groups across the country. And it will also change the conversation about who is electable in this country. At Run for Something, we focus on local, county, and state offices because these elected leaders directly influence people's everyday lives. Elected officials at this level are the ones that set police budgets, determine local anti-discrimination ordinances, and set housing and commercial zoning rules that can define our communities. Down ballot candidates' offices, determine what our kids learn in school, how funds are allocated for special education students, what reproductive health resources are available in a community, and who gets access to the vote and how elections are run. So we truly hope this call will either help you in your run or convince you to consider running in your community. And with all that said, I would now like to turn the program over to our partner in this event, somebody who is a dear and near friend of mine who we've worked together. I think our first campaign together in 2012 in New Mexico together, but turn it over to Silvina Alarcón, Latino Victory Fund Campaigns Director, to lead our panel discussion.
Good morning, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Manny, for that very warm introduction. Buenas noches con todos. I want to start by saying thank you so much to Run for Something and this amazing partnership, See Yourself Running. Also, thank you to our alumni panelists for participating tonight and to all of you who are joining us tonight. Muchas gracias. I am honored to be here in community with you all to have this important conversation. As Manny said, my name is Silvina Alarcón. I'm the campaigns director for Latino Victory Fund. We were founded in 2014 by Henry Munoz and Eva Longoria. Latino Victory Fund is the campaign arm of our organization and works to increase Latino representation at all levels of government by recruiting, endorsing, and supporting Latino progressive candidates who reflect our community's values. Since then, Latino Victory Fund has endorsed and supported over 200 Latino candidates, with more than 100 elected candidates leading the fight for progressive policies that move our country forward. We also work to increase Latino voter participation through our mobilization efforts, which run parallel to electing Latino candidates in races all across the country. Latino Victory Fund has found out that when Latinos run for office, they engage the Latino community in a nuanced manner and are able to mobilize these voters to turn out to vote. We have had the honor and pleasure of supporting candidates from school board all the way to the president, some of whom you'll hear from tonight. So without further delay, I would like to introduce our panelists. Let's go ahead and start. Joining us tonight is Luisa Santos. Luisa from Bogota, Colombia, was elected to the Miami-Dade County Board in 2020, and she's a small business owner from Lulu's Ice Cream in Miami. Thank you for being with us tonight. Luisa?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be here with two of my very favorite organizations who I have to credit for being here in this elected leadership seat. So thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be with you all tonight.
Thank you so much. Also joining us tonight, we have my fellow paisana from Bolivia, Gaby Salinas. Gaby is now the Shelby County Democratic Party chair in Tennessee. She ran in 2018 and 2020 for the seats in Tennessee's state legislature. She is also a whole scientist, a healthcare advocate, and a state legislature, and a three-time cancer survivor. We are glad to have you with us tonight, Gabby.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm honored to be here. And thank you for believing in me when I was just getting started, before I had even won my primary, right? And I think it's important to support our candidates really early on. So thank you to Latino Victory Fund and Run for Something for always being there and believing in me.
Thank you for running. Thank you for having the courage to do so. Last but not least, I would like to introduce Representative Manny Guzman. Representative Guzman was elected to Pennsylvania's 127th district in 2020. He also was previously elected to the Reading School Board in 2013, and he now also serves as a coalitions director at the Pennsylvania Democratic Party. Welcome.
Hey, saludo mi gente. Of course, this is it's so awesome to be here with not only two kick-ass Latinas, but with all of you here tonight. And I'm really looking forward to having a robust conversation about how we can help encourage you to be a better Latinx candidate and hopefully win your election moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here today. You know that being a candidate is not easy, especially for Latino candidates who face more obstacles day in and day out. But that's why we're here today, to learn more about from our guest speakers. I would like to point out something that Latinos make up 18% of the total US population, yet we are vastly underrepresented in government, serving only 1% of elected positions. Latina representation is even lower, despite demographic and economic political influence. So that means we have a lot of work ahead of us. But without further ado, I would love to dive into the questions. And first question I would love to ask to Gabby. Gabby, tell us about when you first thought about running for office. What went through your head and how did you decide that running for office was right for you?
Yeah, for me, I'm very much a product of my time and things that have happened to me, like many of us. I grew up in a time before the Affordable Care Act had passed. As a young cancer survivor, my family came to the US so that I could get treatment for the type of bone cancer that I had. And I was 7 years old, right? Trying to go to college, growing up in an environment where I needed so much healthcare, but we had things like pre-existing conditions. We had lifetime caps. The insurance companies were allowed to discriminate against you just because they felt like it, essentially. I just felt the injustice of that in my bones and to my core. And as the Affordable Care Act passed and the Supreme Court decided that it would be up to the states to decide whether a Medicaid expansion would take place in the states, that really got me more involved in our local politics. And I knew that we were going to have a hard time here in Tennessee, mainly because of the political environment. And I would go to these committee meetings because I really believed in Medicaid expansion. I believe healthcare is a human right. And I would watch people, especially my elected official, my senator, argue against the best interest of our community, because we're a medical city. We have a lot of hospitals that are constantly struggling for funding, and we have a high population of uninsured people. And I knew that the struggles that I was facing weren't just for me, it was my entire community that was facing these struggles, and our elected officials weren't doing anything other than getting in the way of us accepting that federal money. And I knew I had to run. I knew that I had to be that person that advocated for the healthcare of our community, because it's not just healthcare, right? If you're not healthy, how do you go to work, right? There's so much that healthcare impacts that we need to make sure that everybody is on an equal playing field when it comes to healthcare. So when he was up for re-election, I decided to run against him on a healthcare platform.
That's amazing. Having the courage to run for office is a great responsibility. So thank you so much for running and doing so in a way that came from your heart, from the issues that were dear to you. I want to go over to Representative Guzman. Representative Guzman, once you decided to run, who did you talk to and what did you need to learn? How are the communities on the ground, elected officials, and the political organizations helpful to your campaign?
That's such an excellent question. Thank you so much. And I've tried to think about this question and try to think back to when the first time I was running for office. I've run now several campaigns now, but I'm real focused on those days when I was running fresh out of college for the Reading School Board here in the city of Reading in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And, I wrote down 5 things that I think are what I think is practical advice that candidates who are watching this could use on their next campaign. So I know this sounds real basic, ladies and gentlemen, but number one is like the role of the office. Like we have to understand that when we're knocking on some of the communities that we live in, they may not know all the duties of a state representative or a school board member, right? And so it's our job as candidates to not only inform ourselves about what the office is, but also be able to do that in like a 30-second pitch when folks ask us, hey, what does a state representative actually do? So that's number one. I know it sounds real basic, ladies and gentlemen, but it's so important to know that. The second one I would say is understanding the rules of the game. I've been around campaigns, since I got out of college. I started on President Obama's 2008 presidential campaign as an Obama fellow. And, I can't tell you over the years the countless times that I've seen candidates disqualify themselves. And so again, this is very basic, right? But it's so important to understand the rules of the game, because 9 times out of 10, you can have the best ideas of the world. You can have the most energy as a candidate, but if you don't make it on the ballot, it's all for nothing, right? So it's so important. And again, I want to emphasize that it's basic level, but if you look back in the history of Manny Guzman, there was a particular race that I won for city council here in the city of Reading, but because I didn't dot my I's and cross my T's, I was not able to take on the position. So that's just a real life example of how it has happened to me, and it can happen to any one of you if you're not crossing your T's and dotting your I's. So knowing the rules of the game are so important, ladies and gentlemen. Third, I would say, you want to find an old head in your neighborhood, okay? You don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's somebody in your neighborhood right now who has been a justice warrior within your particular neighborhood and in your surroundings, right? So find out who that person is and attach yourself to their hip. You wanna soak up as much knowledge from this old head as possible. You want this old head to, and again, I use old head in a loving way, right? So don't take no offense, everybody. But you want somebody who has the knowledge, the expertise of not only political campaigns, but also someone who can help you open doors and make connections for you, whereas you being a starting candidate may not have all those connections right away, right? So definitely search out for that old head. And I tell you, 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, if you're looking for individuals to be mentors, if you ask them, they're more than willing to give you the information that they've learned throughout the years to make life as a candidate for you so much easier. And then finally, on that point of old heads, when you're running a campaign, you need somebody to tell you the truths that you don't necessarily want to hear, right? All of us who have run campaigns, sometimes we can get sucked into the good news that's happening, the polls, right? That may say that we're winning, right? Or, the energy on Facebook, right? But understand that polls and energy on Facebook don't win elections. It's actual voters pushing that dial and submitting mail-in ballots for you. Fourth is creating a game plan, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, again, you want to talk to your old head. That person can help you figure out how can you win? What is it? How many votes are you going to need to get you to be a top contender? It's so important. I've run into so many candidates and campaigns who go at this blind, and you always want to have an end goal in mind. What is that number that you need to win? And then finally, you need to bake in, you need to put this into your head that you need to have built-in flexibility in everything that you do. no matter how much game planning you do, no matter how much you have an old head who tells you, who helps you avoid some of the pitfalls, some of these things in life, you just got to go through yourself. And this is a contact sport, ladies and gentlemen. And so you got to be willing. You got to be willing to take the punches and sometimes throw some punches of your own in order to make sure that folks know where you stand on the issue. So just think about those things. Think about baking flexibility into everything that you do. And I guarantee you that will make you a more dynamic and formidable candidate.
Thank you so much for that. Spoken like a true organizer. As myself, as a Obama Fellow, 2012 though, I can attest that that is a great strategy to win campaigns. Does anybody have anything else to add to that? All right. Well, Luisa, you're next. You're a small business owner, and we have found out that running for office is a bit like starting a business, and no one can do it on their own. How did you assemble the team of people to help you?
Yeah, I think that's such a great analogy, and I actually use it all the time. And I say that really running for office was so much like starting my business. And I started my business at a very early age. And I have to share a quick update, which doesn't change anything, but I actually sold my business recently. So I'm not fully operating now, but definitely can talk about it for all day long. I founded it and grew it over 7.5 years and successfully exited, which has been a really great journey. So why is it like running for office? Well, I had to have audacity to think that I could do this thing, right? And especially as younger people, Hispanics, sometimes, Latinx people, we haven't seen ourselves in those positions. And so it takes some audacity almost to see ourselves in that position. And I think that's a beautiful thing that I have stepped into and that I actually continue to look for. I'm always looking for how I can be audacious in a way that will get me to have more positive impact. And so when it came to building a team specifically, I actually had the pleasure and honor of building an incredible fellowship for my campaign. And I know you all are Obama Fellows, which was like a whole movement in of itself. And I basically said, no race is too small to build in an awesome program for young people and really all kinds of people to get involved. And so what we did is basically, I started recruiting students who I saw at all kinds of events, activists in our community. And I said, here's what I believe in. Here's my vision for our school board. Here's my story. If you believe in this too, will you get involved? And so that was the building really like the people power that it takes to do the things that it takes to win campaigns, to have strong field, to have strong fundraising. And then the other side of that was, how am I going to get the smartest minds around me? And that looked a few different ways. One, I went to all the mentors I've built throughout my life, whether through my business, through school, through jobs I had. And I told them what I was thinking very early on. And some of them thought I was out of my mind and told me to wait my turn and to get more experience. And some of them said, I believe in you. What can I do? And those people, I ran with it. I asked them I gave them roles. I was very clear. And that's so important when you're a candidate, to really be clear about, it's not just, can you help me? It's like, okay, you specifically will give me credibility. I need you to host an event that I can publicly say this person is backing me. I don't care if you show up for 5 minutes. I just need to use your name, right? And then there were others where I was like, I know that you've got time. I need you to help me with X, Y, and Z, right? So that was the mentorship circle. That was the student circle, the volunteer circle. And then the strategists, right? The people who actually know how to do these things, because I certainly was no expert at it. And there I went to amazing organizations like Latino Victory Fund, like Run for Something. Run for Something, I have to say, very early on in my campaign, connected me to an incredible strategist who basically helped me plan out my path to victory at a time where many people told me it wasn't likely, right? But we crunched numbers and it was actually very likely, because I'll just share quickly that my district currently is 64% Hispanic students, 92% students of color, and had never had a representative of either of those backgrounds or lower socioeconomic background, which is majority of the students in my district. And so, you know, we ran the numbers. I did have a path to victory, sure, an unlikely one when a 28-year commissioner jumped into my race, but that didn't stop me, right? So, so I went to those three different kind of buckets of people to help me put in place the things I needed to run a strategically sound campaign that in the end accomplished something that I think most people locally thought was really close to impossible.
Thank you so much for sharing that. As you know, as many of us in the call right now, we know that, you know, having an army of people, a people-powered campaign is really important to winning elections. Without your volunteers, without your fellows, without those old heads, and without your team, it's really going to be, you need community. Because with community, you are able to win campaigns. So thank you so much for sharing that. I wanted to give you the opportunity to end someone else, if you'd like to jump in and give your two thoughts about how do you put together your team.
Yeah, I think also having community people that may have never thought of politics or campaigning to be part of their life. I would just keep an eye out for people that are very much involved with the community. And I would ask them, like, hey, have you ever thought about working on a campaign? And most of the time they would take me up on it and said, I hadn't thought about it, but I do care about my community. And sometimes they make the best volunteers because they're stakes in the games for them, right? Like they, you know, whether they have a child that goes to a school in your district, or they don't have access to a clinic or a hospital in the district because it's shut down because of lack of funding. There is stake in that. And those volunteers, those workers work extremely hard because they have something to lose if we don't win, right? And I think for me, I try to keep it like 1 degree of separation from my district, everyone involved.
That's amazing. And it's very true that, you know, those volunteers who have never been involved in politics before, sometimes they are the most enthusiastic and the most giving of their time and efforts. So that's a great point. And I'll stay with you, Gabby, and ask, you know, candidates always tell us of the fundraising idea and how it seems so daunting. How did you get started, and how did you get better over time?
Yeah, you can only run the race that you can afford. So money is important, but it's not everything. In my primary, for example, I was outspent 5-1. And I was in a district where it's more affluent, very white. And early on, a lot of the high dollar donors went with my opponent, for example. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to capture those donors, that they were very much set on that person. However, I knew that we could have a lot more donors and small dollar donors to our campaign. So we had, even though he had more money, we had more people donating to our campaign. And if someone donates to your campaign, they're going to go out and vote for you, right? It's better to have 100 people give you $1 than have one person give you $100. Obviously, if you have both, that's great. That's wonderful, because then you have $200. But I think small dollar donations are so important, and those dollars add up, and they make you very competitive in a race that may not look so competitive, right? So I think we had close to 1,000 donors in our first primary, which for a small state race is a lot. And we knew that we didn't have to match our opponent dollar for dollar, but we had to be very smart about how we spent our money, right? So having multiple budgets that address how much money you have and being realistic and knowing where to invest it is important. but you have to just ask everybody, can you give to my campaign? Even if they can only give $5, that is $5 that you can use. That's, several mailers that you can send. That's some door hangers. It's important, and every single dollar makes a difference. And I think that Latinos, we know how to make a dollar go far. So I think that if we can get enough money, we know how to stretch it out to have the biggest impact, right? And that's what's going to make us great leaders as well. What you can't do is get discouraged by looking at the disclosures and see someone that has, in my general, I got outspent 10-1. So, and the lieutenant governor spent $300,000 of TV ads just to attack me. And I was like, we held firm. We're like, money doesn't vote, people vote, and we're going to get this done. And we just kept at it, asking our small dollar donors. Every time we got attacked, we used it as a fundraising opportunity. It's like, hey, we need money to get our message out there because these people are lying about what we're about. And that really helped. One of my signs got, not one, a lot of my signs got vandalized at the polls, and it said, "Make America Great Again" across them. And, we use that as a fundraising tool, right? Putting it out there, and people responded to it. They're like, we're like, hey, we need a sign to replace this sign. Give us $1. And that's what, we made very small asks, and people, of course, if they had more, they gave us more. And that really leveled the playing field for us. And even though we got outspent 10-1, we came within 1% of beating a 9-year incumbent, right? So you just have to continue to ask, find creative ways of asking people, ask everybody, your teachers, your friends, that friend you haven't talked to in like ages, because most of the time they will say yes. And if you make the ask, it's very important. And they see that you took time off to talk to them and get their investment into your race and your community. So just continue to ask, look for organizations like Latino Victory Fund, who are so gracious in providing funds for candidates that are Latinx and progressive and young. There are other organizations that say, if you care about education, who is working on education and helping fund candidates that want to make that a part of their platform. For me, healthcare was important. So we tried to get 100 healthcare workers to give us $100. And then we had a teachers initiative, trying to get 100 teachers to give us $5. We had different levels of giving as well. But you just have to get creative and continue to ask. And when you're tired, keep asking because you can't give up.
That's amazing. So truly spoken from a Powered People campaign, fueled by those small dollars. They're really, really important. Sometimes even more important than those large checks, like you said. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm gonna go back to Luisa and ask, how did you handle transition as a candidate from a private citizen to a public figure? Did you adjust what you posted on social media? Did it affect your day job? How did it go?
Thank you for that question. And I'll quickly add on a little bit to what
yes,
said, which was so well stated, and I agree with wholeheartedly. Fundraising is the most daunting part for, I think, most people who run for office, right? I think I'll speak for myself. I came from a very low socioeconomic background. And so it was hard for me to break the kind of mental blocks around fundraising that some of us have, right? It's real. And once I started to understand, I'm not begging you for money. I am telling you to invest in the future that we both believe in, and really having that mindset shift internally for me didn't make it easy, but it made it less hard. And committing to those small dollar donations, getting really smart. And once you make that decision to run, there are amazing resources that I encourage you all to use for how to get organized, how to write down your entire contact list, how to hit call time, which you'll learn all about. And that's calling everyone you know. And I certainly called everybody, people I hadn't spoken to in 15 years. And you get really good at it by the end of your campaign. It starts off a little slow, but you really flex those muscles and get better at it. And I also was outraced by a lot. So that also is not a definition of whether you'll be successful. How did I transition into this role? Well, certainly the way I posted on social media shifted slightly. I actually ended up creating a campaign, I kept my personal pages, and then I also created an official school board member, Luisa Santos account. I feel like that allows me to sometimes still in my personal share things that I don't necessarily think are connected to my work, and keep those two audiences alive, right? Because the audience that is on my personal certainly will be there to support me through whatever, and maybe some of the audience that is on my school board is only there to get the real updates related to my work. Transitioning into this life, certainly I am, I think, more cognizant of, how I enter any room. Right. And it's interesting because I'm really approachable. I'm really friendly. I want to go talk to everyone. And I've brought that into the role, and it makes people sometimes a little bit like, whoa, you're the school board member. Like, I'm supposed to act a little differently. But I have found that continuing to bring my personality into what I call just being human, and staying true, like not thinking that, oh, now I am in this role, so I have to be completely different than I was before, has actually really helped me be a better servant leader in this role.
Thank you for that. And it is very true. You have to bring your whole self. That is very true. Representative Guzman, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I've just been taking it all in. These two incredible Latinas have so much to offer. But just to hit just two very quick points. Listen, everybody, nobody likes to fundraise. It's literally the absolute worst thing that any candidate likes to do. But like with anything, practice makes perfect, right? Or at least perfect practice makes perfect, right? So yes, it's time consuming. Yes, sometimes it could be soul draining. Yes, sometimes, you'll get somebody on the phone who wants to talk to you for 30 minutes or 40 minutes. Meanwhile, your assistant is looking at you like, please hang up the phone. We got to call the next person. Yes, that's all going to happen. But I'm telling you, these dollars are so important. Yes, they're important. You needed to raise, you needed to win your race. But also, as Gabby said, money is not everything. I won my first school board race in the city of Reading with $1,500. Ladies and gentlemen, $1,500, okay? And I was a first-time candidate fresh out of college, okay? So it can be done. And in this day and age with, digital marketing and, stuff that you can really do that's really effective on the ground, a lot of this stuff can be done at very low cost to you. So, you just have to be creative. But more importantly, what I've always said in all of my campaigns, a candidate may outraise me, but he definitely won't outwork me. And that's the attitude that you have to bring to the table every single day. Yes, you're going to be at a disadvantage just because of who we are and from our backgrounds. There's no doubt about it. How we win, though, is keeping that hustle mentality and understanding that every door that we knock on is a door that we know that our opponents are not knocking on because they're depending on their financial resources to get them over the edge. So use that as motivation to keep raising dollars and, to keep knocking on doors. Social media, you always got to be careful with social media. There's no doubt about it. Life changes, and especially when you win and you're an elected official, that magnification increases by 100%. So, you have to be ready for that. And again, I just want to say, you got to be a little crazy, ladies and gentlemen, to get in this game. Because remember, this is a contact sport. So you have to understand that your opponent or people who are running against you or, the Republican Party, I know we're trying to be a little bit nonpartisan here, right? But they will put negative mailers out against you and it will really hurt your feelings. They will put out negative tweets about you and, you'll get bombarded. And, you have to understand that going into this, that, not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody is going to vote for you. but you want to talk to and persuade the people who are 50-50, and those are the people who you want to spend the time talking to.
That is so true, 100%. And I'll stay with you, Representative, and ask you the final question. As a Latinx representative and a majority Latinx community, how did that affect your campaign? How did you connect with Latinx voters and non-Latinx voters?
Yeah, so first off, the person that I replaced was a 44-year incumbent. He was the longest serving state representative in Pennsylvania history. A white man who continued to win elections, at least for the last 20 years, while the city of Reading continued to be a majority community. And so, you know, it was way past time. Unfortunately, in Pennsylvania, though, Latinos, we account for over a million, about 1.5 million Latinos across the Commonwealth. But unfortunately, there are only 3 of us serving in the House right now. And that includes both the House of Representatives and the General Assembly. So for me, just because I came from a Latino community and I myself am Latino, I never wanted to be defined as the Latino candidate. You know, I've always said, yes, I'm Latino. I'm a proud Latino. I eat my arroz habichuelas. I love it. But I'm also a qualified Latino. You know, I'm a Latino who has gone through the ringer, has, you know, put in the work and has served on community boards and has been a vocal advocate for my community on multiple levels. And based off of those previous qualifications and my lived experiences, that's what makes me, what I believe makes me capable of being able to do this job. And it just so happens that I speak Spanish, so I'm able to communicate with 80% of my district, right? So I think it's important to realize that, you know, don't let either yourself or anybody else try to pigeonhole you into being the Latino candidate. I always push back on that and say, listen, yes, I'm Latino, but I'm a qualified Latino, and I have the qualifications and the experience to be able to not only win this position, but also be an effective representative. You know, understanding that the dynamics in every community is different. We understand that, you know, the Latino community, we are not a monolith. You know, we're different here in Pennsylvania than they are in Florida, than they are in Tennessee. So you really have to understand the community that you're looking to represent. And sometimes that means that to a certain segment of our population, you don't talk about certain issues. For a perfect example, there's a conservative Latino section of my community who are majority Catholic, who, you know, when you talk about reproductive issues, that's something that turns them off 100%. And so I'm not trying to say change who you are, but you have to tailor your message to the people that you're speaking to. Never change your values, never change who you are and what you believe in. Always stay strong on that, but understand that when you're talking to different sections of the Latino community, we have different values, we have different familial values, we have different community values. And so your message in that particular moment may turn some folks off if you're not cognizant of the audience that you're talking to. So if there's anything that you take from here today is, you know, be proud to be Latino, but understand that you were destined for something like this, and you are more than qualified, you are more than capable, and you are destined to be in this role, in this position. And that's what makes you the best candidate, along with your lived experiences, to be the best representative, not only for your community, but in my case, for the entire Commonwealth.
Thank you for sharing that, Representative. That is 100% all true. I wanted to give a chance to either Luisa or Gabby to jump in and finish us off.
Yeah, so my district is was very different. It was mostly white, more affluent, part of the county. And, you know, we're in Tennessee, super red. I remember one of the dog whistle attacks that my opponent used. It said, "Vote for me, I'm from here, I'm one of us." And, you know, we have always just run as who we are, being proud of who we are, right? I'm not like, oh yeah, I'm from here. Well, no, I was like, I am an immigrant. I came to this community. We are a community that has a large immigrant population. And who better to represent our values than someone that has had to fight for a right to be a citizen in our country? Who better to understand the importance of healthcare than someone that has not had access to healthcare, but got saved thanks to the hospital that we have here that was founded by an immigrant, right? It's a crown jewel of our community. So always be proud of who you are. Don't ever try to hide or pander to whatever they're trying to get you in a corner about, not being from here or whatever that is. I think I always say I'm a proud Latina who's out here, and there's very few people that work harder than the Latinos, and we're ready to work for everybody to make sure that everybody has good healthcare, good education, that has a fair wage. You can't talk about fair wages without talking about our immigrant community and our Latino community. So I think leading with that instead of like trying to kind of blend in or hide away in some respect, I think it's important to be proud and acknowledge that you bring a lot to the table, right? It's like Representative Guzman said, I'm a qualified person. I'm a scientist. If I was in the legislature, let's just say that COVID would have been handled differently and we wouldn't have so many dead bodies in our state, right? And leading with that and being proud, whether you have everybody has something to offer and some expertise that we need in our legislature and our leadership. So whether it's education, being a scientist, whatever it is, a business person like Luisa, be proud of who you are, and don't try to do it like they do it. We're going to do it our own way, and we're going to redefine what it means to be a leader.
Thank you for sharing. I want to say thank you to all of you for sharing your experience with us. I know that folks have taken away a lot from this conversation, so thank you for leaning in and being a part of it. I want to kick it over to Manny now, who's going to lead on the Q&A. Thank you so much, everybody, for this opportunity. This has been so much fun.
Thank you, Silvina. So I get to do the next fun part, which is before we open up for Q&A from the audience, I'm going to launch a poll. So y'all get ready. And so if you are interested in talking more about your plans to run for office, brainstorm next steps, opt in for a call with a Run for Something volunteer. So click that yes. If you're running for office in 2022 and plan to apply for endorsement, the volunteer call will serve as an endorsement interview. If you are still thinking about running for office, the volunteer will ask questions that will help you figure out what to do next. And so if you opt to speak with a volunteer, you'll receive an email from them in the next 2 to 3 weeks to find a time for both of you to connect for the next 30 minutes, for about 30 minutes about your campaign plan. And so I'm going to launch that right now. And so y'all should see it on your screen. And while this is playing around in the background, we're going to take some Q&A. So, we only have a few questions in the Q&A. So please drop your questions in the Q&A box feature. Like you can ask whatever, you haven't heard, or if you have any other questions, feel free to drop whatever questions you may have for our incredibly qualified panel here. So I'll go ahead and start with one, which is a real one. We talk about fundraising. So Temilia Valenzuela asked, for me, I've been cautious to run because I'm not rich. Have you all had to deal with that? And how did you overcome that? So Luisa, I'll start with you.
Thank you. So yeah, beyond the fundraising, which we'll talk about, it does take, depending on the office, I have to say, it really depends on the office, where you are, many factors. But for me, the office I was running in, fourth largest school district in the nation, while I was running, I had my own business. I could step away. I had the privilege of being able to really spend very little time on my business without having to ask for a leave for my job, et cetera. However, because we were in the middle of the pandemic, my business was suffering. And so I couldn't afford to continue paying myself for my business. And that's key, because we all know we need funds to survive, right? And so I made a hard decision, which I think is a very personal decision that everyone should make on their own, that I was going to use some savings to get me through that election period. Everyone has to make that decision for themselves and see where your situation is, but it does take money to run, right? And there are all kinds, I mean, even just my gas alone was so much because I was going so many places all day long, right? But you can plan for that too, right? Just like you'd plan for any other financial step, you can plan for where you're going. Now, on the fundraising side, you might think, well, I don't come from money. I don't know lots of people with money. So how am I going to raise all this money? Well, one, I can tell you, you certainly know a lot of people. If you put them down on a spreadsheet and you start to look through your contacts, every single person that you've ever interacted with can either give you time or money, and both are very, very valuable when you're running a campaign. And then really you're going to use a network of people, right? So you're going to go share your story and other people will give to you. So I don't think being rich or knowing rich people at all is necessary to raise funds or to run for office. And actually, I think a lot more of our communities who aren't wealthy want to have people represent them who understand their day-to-day struggles. And I think that leaning into that and sharing that and being open about it can also actually help you and your story resonate with more voters.
Sorry about that. Awesome. Gabby, Manny, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I think time is money. Time is money. And I think sometimes the biggest going for us that we have is, if you can have the time, you can generate the funds. So for me, it was a similar position to Lisa. I was a student, so I took a semester off. So I'm a graduate student, I'm pursuing my PhD, and I make money by being a student. I get paid a graduate student stipend. However, I'm like most Latinos, I live in a multi-generational household with my mom, and which was used against me, but that's okay. But that allowed me to I don't have to worry about rent. I don't have to worry about food. So I could 100% focus on raising money because I had the time. So I think there are other advantages that we have kind of already embedded as a community that can help you even up the playing field or give you a fighting chance. And for me, that made a huge difference, being able to be campaign mode the entire time. As soon as the spring semester was over, essentially from spring all the way to December, I had time just to campaign and I didn't have to worry about anything else. And that helped me make more phone calls, contact more people, find more donors, knock on more doors, and that makes a huge difference.
And you want to close this out?
Yeah, I would say I'm probably the wrong person to ask this, because literally every time I've run for office, I've quit my job to run for office. And why is that? Is because, I'm a big believer, and I'm with Luisa, right? Some of the campaigns I've needed to use personal savings. And again, you need to make your own personal decision. At the end of the day, we all got bills to pay, student loans that still need to be paid, car loans, et cetera. So, it's really important. And that's why if you're thinking about running for office, you need to start planning now, right? But I'm a big believer, you don't have to be as drastic as me, but for some reason, when I quit my job and run for office, it's like a switch goes on in my head. And why is that? It's because you have nothing else to fall back on. And so you understand that, your back is up against the wall. So you're like playing a psychological trick on your own mind. You're playing a Jedi mind trick on your own head, because you understand that if you don't win this race, there are going to be some serious financial consequences that, you're going to have to pay. And so that gives me the motivation to go out when I don't want to talk to another voter. I know that if I don't win this race, I ain't got a paycheck, right? If I don't make this phone call to try to raise this, to try to raise this capital, when I am tired and my feet and my plantar fasciitis is killing me, I can afford to send out a volunteer to go knock on doors. And so, please use this time now to think about, how your financials are going to work. But if you can do it, that type of putting your back up against the wall, giving you no other option but to figure out how to win. I really believe that has just motivated me to really win, not by any means necessary, but just motivated me to really push myself over that line.
There you go, folks. Next question, those are really good answers, by the way, is Ana Del Rio. She asks, I want to run, but I do not feel ready, which low-key, you're never ready. I want more experience like volunteering, getting involved, etc. When did you feel like you were ready to actually run? Gammy, I'm gonna throw it to you.
You ever feel ready? You just have to do it. You have to jump and figure out how you're gonna land while you're jumping. Because if you wait for the right time is never gonna come. And you just have to get in there. And I think volunteering for campaigns is a huge way of getting experience because, like we said, we're always in need of volunteer people. So that's how I started. I started volunteering and I thought I was going to get to put on something low, very simple stuff. And really quickly, they're like, no, you're in charge of this. You're going to put on this fundraiser. You're going to, and I was like, okay. And, I was in college at the time. If you show up, they will put you to work and you will learn so much. So definitely reach out to campaigns or people that you're passionate about supporting. If there's another Latino that's running in your area, whether it's a position that you're not interested in right now, you can learn so much. I volunteered for someone that was running for mayor and she was a Black woman. And I learned so much about running as a woman. I remember someone talking about the way she was dressing and the lipstick she was wearing. And I was like, what? Why do people care about that? And that came really in handy when I decided to run. But if you show up to volunteer, you will be put to work. And that's a great way of getting experience.
Manny, I'll jump in and say, listen, you're never going to be ready. If you're waiting, that switch is never going to turn on. Sometimes, just as Gabby said, you just got to take that leap of faith. You got to put it all on black and hope that it works out. I mean, this is essentially what it is, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, we can give you the best advice, but at the end of the day, I know what it feels like to be on the losing side of a campaign and also on the winning side of a campaign. None of this is guaranteed. Everything is just about you believing in yourself and convincing other people to believe in your vision and for the vision of the community as a whole. But none of it is guaranteed. But I guarantee you this, is that you'll never be the same after you run your campaign. You'll look at the world in a much different lens. You'll be a little bit more cynical, no doubt, but you'll understand what it takes to run a functional campaign. When you're a candidate and you lose, you're able to get jobs with Run for Something or with your local state party, right? They want to use your skills as maybe a failed candidate the first time, because not all of us win the first time, everybody. Not all of us can be, winners on that election day. So, you have to understand that all of this is a leap of faith. All of this is putting it all on black and just really hoping that you're able to convince enough voters to push that button for you at the end of the day. And if they don't, hey, you take the lump on the chin, you brush yourself off, because I'm a big believer that when you get knocked down, as long as you can look up, you can get up.
I love that. I need you in my ear right through my day. I just need that kind of motivational speech all day long. And I would like to add, other ways that you can get more comfortable with it. I agree. You'll never feel like, oh yeah, I'm totally ready. This is for me. But you have the audacity to believe that you have something to contribute and that you should do it. So you can also volunteer for a campaign. Absolutely. And I actually recommend going to a meeting of the body that you want to be a part of. I think that is so telling when you just show up and see how things work. And I actually personally went for years to school board meetings, because another thing I recommend, if it's available, is get involved with a non-for-profit that's working on an issue you care about, and even try to get on their board. I was on the board of a non-for-profit for education, and that took me to school board meetings. And sitting there, I became reassured that change needed to come and that students needed to be centered, and really sitting in those meetings is where I gained the most courage to say, this needs to change and I have something to contribute.
So yeah, no, you're never ready. Like, I will say one last thing. Always check in with your partner or friends and ask them whether you think you should run, because they'll be real honest with you. And if your partner, like, you want to have your partner support in this if you have a partner, because there's nothing worse than having to fight your partner along the way. I was very lucky. My girlfriend the first time was very supportive. Actually, my fiance, not like still supportive the second time. But you know, I think definitely double check with them, the people in your life first, because they're like the easiest people to ask. Next up, I have Amanda Grossman asks, do any of y'all have any resources you recommend reaching out to if we would like to make climate change a part of our platform/focus issue? Would love to connect with more Latinxes in the climate and repro rights spaces.
I have lots of local organizations I work with. So I don't have any national organizations, but I think if there's something you care about, and, you know, volunteering for any org, even if it's virtually online, will give you the knowledge to be able to speak on it as part of your campaign. But I'll let Gabby go. I know she had something.
Yeah, the Sunrise Movement has a lot of chapters across the United States. 314, that is more geared towards scientists, but March for Science has a lot of resources. AAAS, which is the Academy for the Advancement of Science, they have a lot there. They do some lobbying as well. So there's a lot of issues that are on their website regarding climate change. Your local Sierra Club, oh my gosh, like I have those people on speed dial, because sometimes I remember we were talking about like digging for certain minerals, and I'm like, I feel like this, what we're trying to do is not good, but I'm not sure. So, you know, I always talk to them about advice on the issues that are going on. But yeah, the Sierra Club has been hugely helpful for me. And I know they have a lot of chapters across the United States as well.
Yeah, you know, I would just echo all of that. All of those organizations are great. I would just also just ask you to keep in mind, right, that in some of our communities, especially in some of our urban areas, like some of the areas that I represent, understand that when you're talking about climate issues, it may fall not necessarily on deaf ears, but you have to understand the hierarchy of needs, right? So when we're going into devastated communities that, you know, schools are not teaching, you know, equitable curriculum, they're driving on roads that have potholes the size of pools, right? You have to, you know, they can't pay their rent or can't pay their water bills. So it's all about tailoring your message to the audience that you're speaking with. And while, you know, we all want to be justice warriors and we all want to go out there and talk about climate, we have to understand that in a lot of our communities, that's not very high on their list. So understand that when you're talking to voters and you're knocking on their doors, try to focus on bread and butter issues, because that'll go a long way towards convincing voters why you're the candidate that's best suited to represent their interests.
Actually, I just want to add something really quick. I actually had the honor of introducing a clean energy commitment by 2030 for our schools. Did I ever talk about that on the campaign trail? With very few people, right? But it was one of the first big things we did. So I agree with Rep Guzman that someone told me apple pie is what I want to stick to when I'm talking, you know, even on my website and stuff. So I mixed it. I stayed true to my values. I stayed true to some of my ideas that are way more progressive than the board had seen. But I did put apple pie issues on the larger messaging, and then came in and did the work, right? So
there you go. So I have a question from Sebastian Alonso Rodriguez, which is, how can I run for a school board as a special needs student and member of the LGBTQIA community? What advice would y'all give me?
I'll say something very quick. I think that those are two communities that have so much to contribute to identities that, frankly, are completely underserved, right, in our schools. And so sharing your personal story and leaning into that will be so powerful and will make you such a strong candidate, because who better than you to solve those issues? So leaning into those identities, being proud of them, and I think it's a plus.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a plus. I myself have a physical disability and a learning disability. And my mom is in a wheelchair, and she's been in a wheelchair the majority of my life. And I think sometimes people have stereotypes of what we can achieve or what accessibility looks like, or that we're getting special treatment in some way or another. And I think it's, if you run, like we have said, being proud of who you are and what you bring to the table. You know, I think people that are neurodivergent think of things differently, and maybe they have different ideas of how we can solve all the problems that we're facing, right? So I think running with that as, you know, your full self is going to help change the world and what leadership looks like, right? We need everybody at the table. And I think never shy away from it, but always making sure that you highlight the strengths that you bring to the table is very important.
Very quickly on that note, you belong, you deserve a spot at the table, you know, and I would encourage you to run. Listen, if these idiots who are in school board meetings right now talking about CRT all across the country, you know, who are school board members themselves and are against, you know, masking our kids in schools, you know, you can be a million times better representative to their community than the folks who are currently sitting in those seats. So, you know, use these issues as motivation. You belong at the table. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And the kids in your district will look up to you whenever issues are going on in their community. And so, yes, run, do it. Don't look back, because if those idiots can be there and talk nonsense about CRT and anti-vaxxers and whatever, you could be there speaking truth to power and representing your community to the best of your ability.
Amen to all that. So I will also say there's an awesome candidate training series coming up. It's in our On the Run for Something. It's in the chat. It's basically coming up for people with disabilities. It's called our Elevate series that we're partnering up with the National Council on Independent Living, who we did another event with. But it's we're really excited about it. So feel free, please check out the link that's been dropped in the chat if you're interested in that training. But that was great. Now, one of the questions I have for y'all is, what would you do the same? Because this is, I mean, y'all probably go to sleep with this. Thinking about this, what would you do the same or different in your future campaigns?
I guess I can go first. Wow. I think obviously in terms of the same would be just making sure that we're true to our people powered model in terms of, for example, we had over 100,000 direct voter contacts in our district before Election Day. And that was, you know, a goal that we set out really early on, and we were willing to talk to everybody. We were talking, I mean, we were out there making sure that we were engaging people in a safe way. We were very much committed to not putting people's health in danger, so we didn't do canvassing. And my opponent did canvass, and I know that hurt us, but I wouldn't do it any other different way, because I don't think I would be able to sleep at night if we were responsible for someone getting COVID or, you know, getting hospitalized or even dying from COVID. So I would do that part the same differently. I think, which is doing things earlier a lot. Here in Tennessee, we have early voting, for example, and it's essentially a month full of election days back to back. And they're just really long. And the majority of our voters do vote early. However, this past election, it was like, over 80% of the people voted early. So I think kind of changing our strategy a little bit would have been helpful. But other than that, in terms of messaging, in terms of how we approached the race, I think everything we did was on point.
I can go next. I agree with Gabby. I think there was a lot that we would do again. And I'll name some of those things because I think they were a little different, and it might be helpful to some of the people who are listening who are going to run. I focused a lot, you can even tell right now, on branding. I did not have any name recognition compared to, like I said, the 28-year veteran that jumped into my race, right? So I made sure that I talked to anyone and everyone from very early, and that everything was branded, everything you could recognize, anything that was Luisa Santos all throughout the district. One thing I would have done earlier was follow my gut, right? Especially in the time of COVID, there were no rules for how you campaign during COVID. And I think a lot of people were kind of hesitant and waiting to see. And eventually I did earlier than most other candidates, but I think I would have done it earlier to think, how can I safely have voter contact during COVID, right? A lot of times that looked like, really ramping up phone banking. And then we even figured out how to do touchless, I feel like we figured out like Amazon level logistics for petition collecting with like baggies that sealed, and we had, people in masks and gloves and sanitizer everywhere that we would deliver and then have people text us back to go pick up. And we collected over 1,600 petitions that way in the height of COVID. And so, just following our gut earlier, knocking earlier. At the end of my campaign, we ended up having making over 88,000 phone calls, knocking over 12,000 doors, and sending over 500,000, that's 500,000 text messages, right? That doesn't happen overnight. And I think people will tell you, oh, it's too early. They'll never remember you if you're knocking at this point, right? And for me, it was like, no, I needed to knock earlier because I turned all those people, not all of them, but a good portion of them, into believers who then went and told their families and friends, and into volunteers who then joined my campaign and gave us even more power to reach more people.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that, you want to get to the point where you're knocking on somebody's door and they say, Manny, enough, stop knocking on my door. I'm going to vote for you. And that's when, you can stop knocking on somebody's door. Up until that point, it's fair game. It's fair game, ladies and gentlemen. But, listen, to answer the question, I'm a big believer. One of the things that I will continue to do is just to continue to keep just a hustler mindset in this position. Even now that I'm an incumbent, I still see myself as being, 20 points down, Game 7 NBA Finals, and you're down 20 points going into the fourth quarter. So, and that's the type of mentality that you have to keep. You have to stay hungry in this game. You have to stay, and you can never get complacent. Especially if you are a person of color, and when you win, you are a person of color who is an elected official. You have to understand that once you cross that line, and I know that Manny and I know Luisa and Gabby can say it, you got a target on your back the size of Jupiter. And so you have to understand that. So I would keep the same mentality and hustler spirit in all of my campaigns. But one thing I want to emphasize is that every single campaign is different. So what worked for me in my first campaign may not work for me again in the second campaign. So again, it's what I said earlier about building flexibility into your mindset. You have to understand that even if you win, great, you're celebrating the success, but don't get too drunk on yourself, ladies and gentlemen, because that next election is coming up right around the corner. And if you don't do what you need to do as a constituent service representative, the voters of that district can easily vote you out. None of us are tied to these positions. We are borrowing these seats. We borrow this public space, and on any given Tuesday, any of us could lose this seat to another individual that outworks us, out hustles us, and out game plans us. So, keep the hustle mentality. Always understand that you gotta work. This is never gonna be given to you by anybody. So you always gotta go out there and get it, but also understand that you need to, every campaign that you go into, whether you win or whether you lose, you need to look at it from a new and different lens and perspective, because each and every campaign is different, and all the dynamics within the campaign is different depending on the campaign cycle. So keep those things in mind. Take the lumps, take the cocotazos on your head when you get them, because you will get them, ladies and gentlemen. There's nothing that any of us could say that's going to prevent you from getting the cocotazos, either from your opponent, from a local media, or from a local hater. It's going to happen. So, just keep the positive mentality, go out there, let folks know why you're the best candidate and why your values are the best values to help represent your community that you're trying to represent.
All right, one last question. And this is my personal point of personal privilege. And that is, like I said, campaigns are difficult. They take up a lot of our time. They take some money. So what, name a person in your campaign who helped you, whether it was get through the day or just helped get you hyped, things like that. Who was that one person for you during your campaign?
I'll jump in. I say that it was my old head, Angel Figueroa, the first Latino city councilman here in the city of Reading. And why is that? Because he was somebody who looked like me, who came from a similar background that I came from, who had been through the gauntlet. And so as candidates, you want to search out other candidates. You want to talk to as many people as you can who are currently running, because whether you'd like to admit it or not, we're all kinfolk. And we all have even though our communities are very different, in a lot of the ways, campaigning strategies are the same in Reading as they are in Miami, as they are in Tennessee. And so, the best advice that I can give you is find somebody who is always going to be in your corner, but find somebody who's always willing to tell you the truth. And that is what you need. You need somebody to say, Manny, I think you're 20 points down right now. You need somebody to say, Manny, I think you did a hell of a job in that debate. You need somebody in your corner to always keep you hyped and also keep your head from exploding, because you get a lot of people who come up to you and say, oh, you're so articulate. You're the best sounding speaker I ever had. And if you let it, ladies and gentlemen, it can gas you up. Don't get gassed up out here. All right. You need people in your corner who can bring you down to the level and who are always willing to let you know that they're in your corner and they're always have your back.
I'll jump in. My ride or die, my partner, who was with me through it all when I needed, coffee ready in the morning, when I, would work 9-hour days. And then, he said, no, we need to get out there. We need to go knock. And really, really, again, was pumping me up and also checking me when I needed to do better. And you have to find that person. It doesn't have to be a family member, a partner, but you got to find them.
I think I have two. One of them is my mom. She's just a badass and would drive me everywhere. She was kind of like the person that I could count on to make sure that I had time to eat, which is important. Sometimes you don't even have time to eat when you're a candidate. We would do these really late night drive-throughs to put signs up at 10, 11 at night. If I needed, I would tell, we call her La Manda Más. She's the one that's in charge above me. If I needed, she was PR, campaign manager, whatever I needed her to step up and do, she was just okay, what do you need me to do? Whether English didn't matter, she was going to go out and do it. If a volunteer needed something, she would pick it up and take it to them. So I think for me, she was definitely my MVP. And then from the candidate side, the first time I ran, I emailed the first elected Latino in Tennessee, and he was on the city council in Nashville. So it's a different city. And his name is Fabian Bende, and I call him my padrino in politics because he, you know, was one of the first out there and really knows how hard it is to do it. And, you know, he was like, what do you need? And I was like, well, you know, this disclosure is coming up. I don't have, you know, I need to be raising X amount of money. He's like, well, I'll host a fundraiser for you. Come and would help me in any way and everywhere. And even if it was just a listening ear. And that really made a huge difference because you have someone that has had the same experience as you as a Latino. And knows exactly what you're facing. You don't even have to say anything. They already get it. And just being on your side, cheering for you and finding ways of helping. And I know he has, not for me, but for other candidates. And when I remember when I secured the nomination, I was the first Latina to secure the nomination on the Democratic side ever. And he sent me a note, really nice text. He said, thank you just for withstanding everything that people have put you through. And to me, that just like, I was like, we have to win now. So having someone that has been through it was very valuable.
That's amazing. Well, thank y'all so much. Mine was my partner, like clear. She like literally would not be able to function without her. And that's why we're, you know, after I got elected, like gauged. So like I proposed to her. So like, you know, I owed her that, like, honestly. But no, I want to thank all of y'all for being here. I want to thank Silvina from Latino Victory Fund, who we actually worked on the same campaign together, like back in 2012 in New Mexico, and she's one of my ride or die. She's the homie. But thank you for all the hard work and I'm also a Latino Victory endorsed candidate. So I'd like, you know, shout out to y'all for all the hard work that you do to help so many candidates across the country. Like, honestly, thank you, Silvina. And, you know, thank you to all our panelists, to Luisa, to Gabby, to Manny. Like, y'all are so amazing and are doing such great work out there in your states. And I just want to also thank everyone who participated tonight. Thank you for asking such candid questions and for being and for asking them for us. And everyone on this call will be getting an email from us tomorrow morning with resources from Run for Something and Latino Victory Fund to use as you're considering your run for office. And if you opted in to speak with a volunteer, which, look, gotta close that poll, boom, I just ended that poll. So if you opted in, you'll get a call or you'll get an email in the next 2 to 3 weeks to find a time to schedule, a time to like actually have that like follow-up volunteer call. And, we need you and we're here to support you. Nuestra comunidad te necesita. So like I am one of the only Latinos elected in New Hampshire. And I did, part of the reason I ran is because there was none of us. There was going to be no other Latinos in the House. And I was like, no, not in a 30% Latino district. Which was the largest Latino district in New Hampshire, believe it or not. We need our peoples out there because we are going to be one of the only ones that are going to fight for the voices of our community. So thank you so much for being out here. And I hope all of y'all have a wonderful night.